Well, look, it's a pleasure to be here today. So yes, I am Joel Horowitz, and I do work for IBM. So what I'm going to talk to you all about today is operationalizing data science. I think there's a lot of interest on data science, and I know all of you are deeply in the reactive community, and I think this will become more and more relevant as we go on as a community. But first, let's talk about meat slicers. So for those of you who don't know, IBM actually started out as a meat slicing company, right? As well as Sebastian mentioned, we also sold scales apparently. And we sold meat slicers out of this building. So as you can tell, we started from humble beginnings, like many of the small businesses and startups that many of you work for today. Later on, we got into the data business. And as I see it, we've been in the data business ever since. We've forayed in a lot of other industries and many other professions, but by and large, data is at the core of IBM. And this is what attracted me personally to join IBM, was to really look at how data is evolving in the modern age. So these days, our storefront looks like this. And so if you're not familiar, these are called our IBM Blue Mix garages. We have these garages spread out all over the country and all over the world. And we are much more inviting for developers and data scientists to come here and work together. But before I go too far with that, let's get a little bit into data science itself. So I don't know if you've seen this movie. It's one of my favorites. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this comes to mind when I think about data science. And so when you think about this, you look at, okay, how did data science start? So about 5 years ago, we had individuals looking at data science. So you had people who were very steeped in statistics and math, a little bit of development or programming, as well as had some level of business acumen. This was kind of the rough definition of data science as people looked at it. So the way we approached this back then was, you had these unicorns out there, and we said, well, let's try to attract them to some really tough problems. So you had companies who basically said, all right, let's open up our data, let's put it online, and let's basically see if we can put a prize together. So this company decided to put $1 million prize out for a data scientist or data science team who could develop an algorithm that could better predict the DVDs that you wanted to watch. Now the problem with this are a number of things. So for one, the algorithm that won wasn't really ever put to use. So why is that? Well, the reason for that is because even though the algorithm itself was more accurate and is able to do a better job at predicting and personalizing DVDs, it was very difficult to actually engineer into production. So this was, I would say, kind of a waste of $1 million, right? And not only that, the data that they made available was personal data. It was their customer data of the actual movies that they watched. And so they also had the fun experience of having a lawsuit. Right? And so there's a challenge here where people keep kind of saying, I'm going to make my data available, but then they run into these privacy issues, and that's a major concern. And so the last thing is, by the time they ended up actually engineering this algorithm into production, they had moved on to streaming. So their business had fundamentally changed, right? So this is one issue. So then another company had a smart idea of saying, well, that works so well, let's create a platform. Let's crowdsource data science. This must be the way, right? It's a scarce commodity, so let's try to pull data scientists onto a single platform. Let's encourage companies to upload their data onto this platform and have them actually start competing against each other. So it's like you fostered, this culture of one-upmanship, right? And saying who can train the best algorithm without actually fundamentally addressing the problem, which is you still can't operationalize these algorithms. Right? It hasn't changed. And so today I went on this platform just the other day and there's only 16 companies there running, right? With maybe 3 competitions going. And so later on, in these days, what's actually the most kind of prevalent today is auto machine learning, right? Or auto data science, so creating automated data science. So this is just compounding the issue. Now instead of having, individuals, really being, steeped and looking at data carefully and creating machine learning algorithms, now we're automating it, right? So now it's even easier to do data science, but again, we're not taking care in terms of how we bring it into production. And so this is why I say there's the good, the bad, and the ugly of data science. The good is that more people are now able to do data science. That's great, right? We have more education in schools. In fact, we at IBM offer what we call cognitiveclass.ai, where any of you can go today and learn all the fundamentals to be a data scientist, to learn Scala, to learn Python, to really get steeped in this information. It's free, it's available, it's out there. So that's great. There's a lot more, libraries, data science libraries that you can now choose from, right? So you have the whole R community, you have the whole Python community, you have the whole Spark and Scala community. So there's a lot there for you if you want to get into this profession. That's great, and it's going to continue to grow. The bad is that it's still, relatively difficult, right? It's difficult to understand a lot of times what machine learning is doing. If you look at the latest neural networks, the recursive, algorithms that we're creating, it's getting actually a lot more confusing, right? It's getting very complex in terms of how we do this. So that's maybe the bad news. The ugly part is that, again, nobody is actually addressing how we operationalize data science, right? So that's what I'm here to talk about. I would say that, we've come a good ways with Watson. We've done our part to try to expose some of these trained algorithms so that you don't have to. And we deliver these as simply as APIs. Now, Watson's great at doing a lot of things. We spend a lot of our time and effort training Watson on specific industries. But I would say Watson, APIs that we have today, and arguably the industry, whether that's Google or Amazon or Microsoft or whomever, solve maybe 10% of the data science and machine learning challenges that are out there in industry with these APIs. So very little. So what I'm here to talk about is that there's these two worlds that exist, right? You have the data world on one side, and we pride ourselves on making that data extremely secure. I think we're probably one of the few companies that really take that as one of our core values, and we've continuously innovated in this area to ensuring that your data stays secure and private. On the other hand, we have the cloud, and we have hybrid cloud or private cloud, whatever cloud you want to call it. But we're seeing this environment, emerge that developers are embracing because it's flexible, it's on demand, and it's easy to build with. But there remains this barrier between these two worlds. In fact, I would say there's a barrier between these two communities. So here to talk about how he and IBM are actually approaching this is Niraj from Verizon. So I'd love to invite up to the stage to talk about how they're approaching this challenge.
Thanks, Joel. How are you doing? Good to see this crowd. Let me start by asking a question. How many of you guys actually are using Reactive platform for running a production application? Okay, good. I hope by next year when we are in Canada, all the hands are up. That should be the target. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey, how we approach this problem, how we picked up this Reactive platform, and where we are, and what we are looking at going forward. So Verizon as a company, a few things about Verizon which you may not know. And I'm just talking about Verizon Wireless here. Verizon as a company, we have Yahoo, we have AOL, and I think we probably are among top 5 or top 6 companies in terms of the amount of traffic we get on a daily basis. So I'm going to specifically touch base on Verizon Wireless here. We get about 175 million hits per month. We get 50 million new users who come to our site every year. This is 1/6. So 1 in every 6 people in this country come to our site on a monthly basis. So it's humongous amount of traffic we get. We get 2.5 billion transactions on our portal. So you can imagine, and this number becomes humongously large, especially around holiday sales, as well as events like iPhone launch. And then recently, we have been expanding rapidly on mobile. So we 34% of our sales are already coming from the mobile platform. So as of last year, we were on Oracle ATG-based e-commerce platform. And we were having our own challenges. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to those challenges, what we were facing. So we had a humongously monolithic application. Okay, the builds were taking more the code drop night. I don't know how many of you guys sit on those nights. I'm sure some of you guys can relate it. It used to go for the whole night. So the whole team will be sitting on the call. The code drop will happen for the whole night because the code base is so large that it has to be dropped completely into production, and then the testing can start. You cannot test your own code base. The environment, just to set up the environment, okay, in production or in non-production or in test man or in staging environment, it used to take 5 to 10 days because of all these complexities. And the builds, because of such a large code base, it will take hours and hours. So on top of it, we were rapidly growing. We were growing into various digital channels, Alexa, okay, Google Home. Then we had Facebook chatbots. All of these were coming. So on one side, we were rapidly expanding into different platforms. On other sides, we had this humongously large code base, and so many of problems are associated with code base that it was dragging us down. It was reducing the speed of innovation. And I'll tell you one fact, which probably some of you guys may not know. For the last 10 years, except for this year, and this is about Apple iPhone launch. This year, Apple divided the iPhone launch into 2 phases, iPhone 8 and iPhone 10. So basically, your traffic got reduced or divided into half. Some of you guys are waiting for iPhone 10. Some of the guys have already bought iPhone 8, so traffic got distributed. But for last 10 years, every telecom provider, Sprint, T-Mobile, you take any telecom provider, including Apple, will go down at 3 o'clock in the night on the day of launch, except Verizon. And we have maintained that record for last 10 years. So we would never go down we call it iconic launch. On iconic launch, we will never go down. So that's the track record we have. And how we have been achieving that track record. So we put a massive amount of effort in being prepared for that particular day. We do a lot of load tests. We build a special infrastructure around that readiness, around that for that day. We take there's a separate team which works on just that iconic launch. It spends 6 to 7 months in the preparedness. We disable all the logging. We write special code base, which is light, and we remove all the complex transactions. So this all work is being done just for a few days, maybe iconic launch, maybe Cyber Monday. And this, if you think about it, while we get a lot of sales on those days, okay, but it is literally a throwaway work because we cannot use that particular code on day-to-day use. So my challenge was, and I took up this responsibility of digital sales last year. So my challenge was I wanted to develop a portal, VerizonWireless.com portal, on these digital media, mobile, app, and desktop, where I won't write special code to handle this traffic. I just want the site to perform. No matter it's thousands users, no matter it's 20,000 users, no matter it is million users. I want the same platform to scale and to perform. Okay, so that was essentially the first challenge which I took. And how did we make that happen? So I set up a team, and I'm sure that some of you guys are going through this journey. And if you have specific questions, we can always touch base after this discussion. But what I did was I set up a small team, and we evaluated all the platforms. Okay, and technology changes. The open source community is growing so fast. The technology stack is literally changing by day. So we wanted to pick up something which will last with us for at least 4 to 5 years, where if we are making investment from resources, from manpower, from technology perspective, we can stay with it at least for 3-4 years. And for Verizon Wireless, for example, and I'm sure for big companies like Verizon, you cannot do the technology stack refresh every year. You need to plan for at least 2 to 3 years or 4 years. So that's what we did. So we were on Oracle WebLogic platform using ATG Web Commerce, which we probably would be one of the largest implementations from Oracle. I think we are the largest, if I'm not wrong. Okay, we were using relational databases, okay, non-elastic, backbone.js. So in order for us to migrate away from this, we had various options. Okay, Angular-based platforms, Spring Boot platform, okay, and then Play Anaka platform. Okay, so we worked with our providers. We had about 2 months of evaluation cycle. Okay, we really spent a lot of time because this was, I was new into the job, so I had to prove something, right? And then I wanted to make sure that I'm not making a mistake. Okay, so in order to make sure that we are truly taking the right direction, okay, we spent a lot of time, 2 months. That was the maximum amount of time in planning we spent to figure out what is the platform. And we decided on the platform which you see on the right-hand side. We picked up Play-Aka-based platform, completely microservices driven. We have not packaged the microservices right now in Lagoon, but we are working on that, to make that happen. We completely came out of relational databases. We are using Redis cache heavily. And then for logging, we are using Elastic Kibana. So the complete 180-degree change from where we were and where we are. And the key reasons for going this way were that these platforms were stateless, async, non-blocking I/O, high throughput, okay, on-demand scalability, and these were the primary reasons why we went with this platform. And today, my desktop application is yet to go on this one. I have migrated my app, and I have migrated my mobile M.dot platforms already, and we are working towards migrating the desktop platform. So this is what we are seeing. We are seeing that literally with half the resources, both on the hardware side as well as on the human resources side, we are able to achieve twice the better results. Okay, amazing results. And in fact, the results are so good that my CIO is taking this platform and he's asking all the groups within Verizon, billing teams, point of sale teams, okay, to look into this and start adapting towards Reactive platform. So in summary, if you want to compare these two platforms, what I'm getting. So today, when we went live with iPhone 8 launch, okay, I did not go with the older code base, which was supposed to take this traffic. I was on the Reactive platform, both on app and on M.dot, and we were able to scale. We were able to take the traffic. We used to be at 1,600 orders per minute. The limit for ATG-based Oracle platform was 1,600 orders per minute. That was the high benchmark we were hitting. With Play Anaka, we are already at 12,000 orders per minute. So to that scale, we are able to scale this platform. And again, we are still learning, okay? And we have some issues here and there, and we still think that we will be able to get even beyond that, okay? Which it's insane because I don't think that we will ever get 12,000 orders per minute. But we are already ready for that. Okay, the infrastructure team is super happy because when we were having these JVMs, which were running the ATG-based platform, they used to put the JVMs with 8 GB, 10 GB, 20 GB memory, okay, because everything was cached in the local cache. Okay, these JVMs are 500 MB. And sometimes they were running at lower memory than that, but we were ashamed to say that. So I said, okay, at least put 512. Right? So at least we can say that. Because comparing to 10 GB, it was looking like a crazy number. So we are running at 512 MB memory now. Okay, so hot reload. Okay, development cycles have reduced by half. Okay, it scales with the need. We don't need massive amount of hardware dedicated. Okay, infrastructure team immediately adds additional hardware if we need. Okay, otherwise we don't need to be dedicating all that hardware to this platform. So amazing amount of results. The response time of the applications, if you see on this, are 2.4 seconds on average. And again, we are very heavy transactional site. There are a lot of backend transactions which happen. We have to validate the credit. We have to validate the history of the customer. So 2.4 seconds seems to be a high number for a lot of people, mostly especially on the content-related applications. But for us, 2.4 is a really good number. And when we compare this number to industry, okay, industry standards are 6, 7, 8 seconds. So we are doing pretty good there. So let me talk about the results now, right? On mobile platform, as I said, we have already been there. So we are looking at 200% increase in the conversion rates because customers love it. The site is faster, is nimble, Okay, we have also changed the site look and feel along with this program, so it's looking pretty nice. And we have brought in both M.Dot and app with exact same look and feel. So if you are on the app or on the M.Dot application, you will not feel the difference. And because we are able to get that kind of performance from this platform, it feels that way. Okay, so sales have gone up the roof on this platform. We are already seeing about 33% of the overall sales coming from mobile platforms. Okay, 50% decrease in the effort which teams are putting in, and the team sizes have already gone down. So all in all, we are super happy with this platform, and we have been, and I would recommend anyone in this team, in this group who is on the sidelines, okay, to come and talk to me. I mean, this is absolutely phenomenal platform, and I would recommend it any day. Joel?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Great. So that was great. Thanks so much, Niraj, for taking us through that. So I wanted to, have Niraj come and join me today because what you're seeing here, and actually even on the prior slide, having a way, in moving to this platform to get, second responses enables us now to start thinking about data science. And so I want to, basically say that as you all start adopting, Reactive platform, it'll be really cool because it's not only enabling you to get these results, to actually be able to have, better customer interactions and actually just frankly have a better experience. It's also going to open the door for us to start talking about data science. We'll get into that in a moment. But I just want to ask you a few questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
So how did you guys first look at, Reactive, and how did you evaluate it? And how did you get buy-in, I guess, from your CIO to deploy it?
So what we did was, as I said, that I created a small group of architects, and the challenge was the same, that you need to come back with an answer which will last for 3 years. Okay, so and Spring Boot was the platform which was very close competitor to play on Akka. And again, the problem with Spring was that Spring had just come up with the new version, and that version had still quite a few open bugs. And when we compared it to Reactive platform, especially non-blocking I/O and async-based platform. So, I mean, it was the choice from the architects. Now, the challenge was that the adoption of Play Akka platform in the industry is not widespread. Okay, and big companies like Verizon typically try to take that approach, which is risk averse. So that was the risk we took. Okay, and that's why I was interested in seeing the name and seeing the hands, because I would want to see more and more hands up. Okay, because because the more people come in this community, the more the growth it will be there, the more the resources we'll find, and it's a community effort. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that actually is a good segue into my second question, which is how do you find people that have the skills? As you pointed out, you went from what looked like a very IT stack to what now looks more like a very kind of development and code stack. So how did you make that shift from a people and culture standpoint?
So we took three-pronged approach there. First is the lead architects in the team. Okay, these are the guys who are day in and day out learning. So they were already learning the platform on their own. Second is we partnered with Lightbend, and we arranged some training. So awesome. Lightbend training, we did a 3-day on-prem training, and Lightbend team came in, and that was really helpful because that created enthusiasm in the group. And the third thing we did was we partnered with Sapient, and Sapient had a good set of resources who were already trained in this technology. So we hired some of the Sapient consultants, and they came on board. So that's how we were able to manage it.
That's great. And then the last question, I mean, are there any tips or tricks, some traps to avoid as you guys deployed Reactive?
Yeah, actually there's been a lot of learning. Okay, and I'm asking my team to publish the white paper and put it on, because if the companies are looking for the same set of stack to go on, okay, definitely they can learn from our learnings. For example, how to use Redis. We literally misused Redis when we started working on this application. Every developer was dumping the data non-stop into Redis. Okay, so those operations have the cost, right? Yep. So read and write operations have the cost. So we have learned a lot from that experience. We are still learning. I'm bringing in a couple of other new technologies. We are bringing Camunda, okay, for business rules. We have not used Camunda yet. Okay, but I have seen the demos, I have seen the technology. I think it's great if you guys have heavy business operations and you want to write the code which your business persons can read, and it is easy to manage and handle. Like for example, let me give you one example: shipping options, right? Verizon wants to offer PayPal, Verizon wants to offer Apple, but there are rules. If you are on Apple device, you want to offer Apple prepay first, then PayPal. If you are on an Android device, probably PayPal will work better. So for all that stuff, we today have Java code. Okay, but and what it becomes difficult to manage. So I'm asking the development teams to take out the business rules out of the code and move it to Commando layer. So that's what we are working on. So that's one example. Second is that Redis, while it's great for caching the objects and caching the data, we are seeing that it is not the great solution for putting the static content, like configuration entries.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm asking the teams to explore the configuration server, because if your Redis cluster goes down, and if it crashes, and if it wipes out the data, you basically lose the static entries too. Okay, and we have seen a couple of times it happening. So we're learning.
We should talk about this one. We have a few data services on our side.
Absolutely. Okay, cool.
We can help with that.
So we are learning and applying those changes.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Oh, and then one last question. What are you guys doing next? I mean, what's the next step on your roadmap?
Actually, so that's now we have this humongous amount of data we are collecting, right? Customers are browsing our site. We have that data. We are using Elastic heavily there. Okay, Kibana and Grafana is the one which we are using for the reporting.
Yep.
But I'm bringing this data science scientist now. So we want to see how we can use this data to personalize, okay, the experience. So we are already using Watson for our chatbots. Okay, so and Watson has been great because it's self-learning, and it is trying to adapt to the questions which customers are asking. Because see, for example, Apple iPhone launch, right? So the minute the iPhone was launched, customers were asking questions about iPhone X and iPhone 8. And it's very difficult to train those robots upfront, right?
Yep.
And so Watson is doing great there. So now I want to see how can we use all this data, use some of the data science technologies, probably Watson or maybe something else.
Yep.
Okay, and use that data to personalize the customer experience so that we can predict, we know what customer is looking for. If customers is going this pattern, we know that this customer is most likely to buy this. If he's dropping, offer him a discount, offer him a promotion. So product, promotion, and personalization is my next target.
Awesome. That sounds great. Yeah, we see that a lot. We see Watson as a good way to kind of get started. But yeah, as you go on, there's a lot more to do. Well, thanks again so much, Niraj, for coming. We appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Cool. So what a great story, right? We've heard from Verizon as well earlier this week. If you missed the talk, I think Kat will probably have that online. So there's a lot going on at Verizon. It's really exciting to see, how Verizon, and not just Verizon, I actually borrowed this from Lightbend, so excuse me for using your slide. But there's a ton of companies out there that right now are going through a very similar transition. We're seeing it both in our clients. In fact, we share a number of clients here that are on this slide. We've met with quite a few of them this week. But we're going through this transition, right? Through this transformation with Reactive, and not just Reactive. I think what you also saw there, and just listening to Niraj speak, there's a lot going on in open source, right? And so IBM is a huge proponent of open source. We have some of the most contributors to open source in the world. We opened the Spark Technology Center earlier this year, or excuse me, earlier 2 years ago, I should say. It feels like yesterday. And so, you're seeing this transformation happen. So, both Lightbend and IBM coming together, we've been partners for a while now. In fact, Lightbend was involved back when they were called TypeSafe, actually as part of the SDC launch. So we're there to offer, our support. We're there to offer our services. And there's a ton of companies like yourselves that are going through this. So now what I'd like to do is go through a quick little demo that my team put together to talk about what this would actually look like, we think, once you have Reactive deployed, and then how you could actually use what we call our data science experience and the actual Watson machine learning service to deploy data science and actually operationalize it into your applications. And so imagine that you're Target or an online retailer like Verizon, and you basically want to start creating some level of personalization. So your goal is to recommend, as you heard Niraj say, that he wants to recommend relevant products to you as the customer to boost sales. As we've seen, there's plenty of data scientists who are now getting well equipped to build machine learning models, right? Whether you're using an open source library like scikit-learn or SparkML, or many of the ones out there. You want to persist that model as a scoring engine, as an API. We've just launched this past month what we call Watson Machine Learning, or rather IBM Machine Learning, that allows you actually to expose that that machine learning algorithm as an API, which is great. And then you are able to deploy it into a reactive application. So this is fairly in beta stage or beta stage. We're going to be working closely with Lightbend to actually bring this to market before the year is out in a much more seamless way. And so it's really cool. So basically, as you can see here, we basically have your standard Jupyter notebook. We've embedded that in what we call the data science experience. Just a quick note on the data science experience. What it is it's basically our collaborative environment for teams to work with data. It runs natively on Spark. You won't get locked in because anything that you create in the data science experience, you can export as a notebook, as an actual file, and push it out if you don't want to stay in the data science experience. And so basically what we're running through here is we're importing data. We're using a library that we've open sourced called Pixie Dust. You can find all of this code on IBM, developer.ibm.com/code, or what we call IBM code. In fact, we, as a philosophy at IBM, anything we demo, we make readily available to you all as developers. So anything you're seeing here, you can actually go there and get the code yourself and see this demo live. So in this case, we're looking at a customer who potentially has put, they obviously have a newborn, they're putting diapers, they're putting baby wash, they're putting these types of things. We're using a k-means clustering algorithm to basically look at what have other customers like this one purchased in the past so that we can actually recommend other products that they may like. So we're training the model in DSX using k-means, so you can see that here, it's just running a loop. And then where we go next is we actually start deploying this model into an application. And so here we're actually creating a deployment ID. We're creating the API in essence. We're making sure that the output is what we expect. And then we're going to actually run that in an application. I'm running through this a little bit fast just because of our time constraints. So, so then what we're doing is we're calling this API in a reactive application via Akka. So we're basically using Watson Machine Learning as a scoring engine via Akka to actually offer recommendations in the application itself. So here's code. I'll admit I'm not a coder, but my friends I know are, and so they put this together for me. And so here you're seeing how they're basically creating the actual token and the API so they can call this application in a reactive platform. So what I think is cool is, here you're basically just seeing this scoring engine can now just grow at scale. So with reactive and the other way that people would probably do this would be using something like PMML, or they would be having to recode from, say, Python into Java, as I discussed before. In fact, that's what Netflix had to do. And instead, you can go straight from training your model, creating the API, and then deploying it at scale in a reactive application. So we pulled this together. Like I said, the code is there for you to look at yourself and actually to use and try yourself IBM code. So what I've demonstrated is, as I started out, what we've seen is that, like I said, you have secure data. You don't necessarily want to expose that to the public, frankly. And so what we're seeing is that people basically are now creating an abstraction, right, of the data using machine learning, right? And so it's really great because now you can keep your data secure, you can keep your data private, you can train that model, and then you can directly feed that into your application with Reactive to make a lot of happy customers, right? So today your application arguably is catering to the mean necessarily, and instead with data science and machine learning, soon you'll be able to be much more personalized in your applications. So we're excited to see that coming along. It's great development and great collaboration with the Lightbend team that's having that effect. So as I pointed out at the top of the talk, what we're seeing in the industry is going from these individual data scientists, working in a silo, modeling their data, and then having a eureka moment, going out, looking for an engineer to help them to actually deploy that algorithm in production. Our goal at IBM, and frankly Lightbend, not to speak for Lightbend, but I would say our goal together is to bring these communities together. IBM is steeped in data, as I mentioned earlier. We have a lot of expertise there. We're investing heavily in data science, as you've probably seen over the last couple of years. And we're working closely with Lightbend to bridge these two communities together. Right? And so what we hope we'll see is this type of scenario where you have people working together, both from the application development side as well as from the data science and engineering side, together to make cognitive applications. And so I attempt to kind of show where we see this trend going. So ourselves included at IBM, we're helping our clients and coaching our clients to move up the stack in terms of going from what I would call these monolithic applications, like you saw from Verizon, the Oracle stack. We ourselves have our WebSphere and J2E stack. I lost the 2 somewhere along the way. And so we're seeing that shift, right? And so right now there's a lot of interest around Spring Boot, and God knows we've committed to Cloud Foundry. But we're watching this, bigger shift happen because of the data and the data science onslaught, right? So what we're seeing is that people are, leapfrogging over, kind of the pivotal and the Spring Boot era to get closer to the data. And so one of my main thesis, the reason why we've partnered with Lightbend, is that I think ultimately data is going to drive applications. I think today they're still relatively separate, but I think that bridge is happening before we know it. So, my recommendation to you and to get started is, go check out the data science experience at ibm.com or datascience.ibm.com. Get familiar with it as a community. We have a number of really cool reactive notebooks that we've created that are free for you to try. They're written in Scala, as well as they'll deploy to Reactive. Some really cool stuff there. Step 2, I think, is look at distributed systems, right? Before I had Reactive, and Brad Murdoch gave me a hard time because some of these open source things aren't reactive. So I said, okay, it's distributed, right? And so I would say, look at distributed systems, and invest in them and look at how they'll make sense for you. I think that there's, when you're looking at this from the outside in, there's a lot of things that look very similar, like Kafka versus Akka. But in reality, when you get a level deeper and you really do your homework, they're used for very different use cases, right? So I would encourage you to start looking at how this ecosystem is evolving and what's the right open source project for you. And then lastly, look at how your business can actually benefit from this stuff. We focus a lot on the immediate costs, and these types of operational benefits, as you saw from Verizon. And some may be thinking, geez, we're reducing the amount of hardware, reducing the amount of people, but in reality, that's actually opening doors to new frontiers. So we're seeing a lot of really interesting stuff happening where the Scala community is starting to interact with the blockchain community around cryptocurrency. So we're seeing some really interesting stuff happen there. We're creating a number of industry consortiums to start bringing that together. IBM Watson is still evolving. It's been a great kind of journey that we've been on at Watson. We've been going into different industries, but there's still a lot more to do in AI. In fact, we're just at the beginning, so it's really exciting stuff. And then lastly, I'm sure as many of you know, security is a major issue. I'm sure if you saw in our earnings report this past week, security is the #1 business for IBM right now. And you think to yourself, well, why is that, right? It's not data, it's not analytics, it's not AI, it's security, right? If you look at Yahoo, where we found out that all of their data was stolen, apparently. This is a major issue, right? And so I think as we start coming together as a community, we absolutely need to take security into account, right? And so I'd be very happy to speak with any of you after this talk. You can find us at our booth. You can find more information online about the Reactive platform. And as well as we're having what we call our cognitive builder fairs happening right here in Austin later this month. So over at Galvanize here in downtown. So please come visit us at the booth, online, or in person if you live here in the Austin area. We'll have a really cool fair there where many practitioners come in and they'll actually demonstrate how they're building cognitive applications with IBM and Lightbend. So with that, I'll take questions or comments or concerns. So thanks. No questions. All right. No questions. So anyone have a question? No? Question there.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name, the other speaker, but this question is for you.
Niraj, yeah.
Niraj.
He's a much better speaker, by the way.
Oh.
You're allowed to ask him questions, too.
Y'all are both great.
Thanks.
So on one of your slides, you said that you, that after you moved to the reactive platform and everything, it took 40% less time to build everything. Can you explain to me a little bit about how you measure that? Because I would assume with like all the training and all the new technologies and languages and everything that there would be a really long time to ramp up and you would constantly be learning. And so 40% is a really high number. Can you explain that a little bit?
So first of all, we did not use Scala. So I want to clarify that. We use Java with Playaka because Scala would have taken more time. And I still want to go Scala route, but we are still evolving. Okay, so we use Java because I already had the ATG developers who were already on Java platform. So it was an easier shift for us to go and use Java with Playaka rather than Scala with Playaka. The second thing is that when we are developing applications in legacy platforms, as I said, there's a lot of interdependency, okay, which brings the productivity down. So today what's happening is that, believe it or not, we still those developers who have moved on to Playaka platform, whenever we have bugs or issues on our older platform, I'm literally begging those developers to load up ATG application and solve those bugs, and they don't want to work on that. So the whole productivity gain, initially, obviously, there's a learning curve, but once they are trained on this platform, because it is, the minute you write the code, you don't have to compile, you don't have to deploy. All that stuff is locally happening on your machine. Okay, the productivity times are, we are getting a lot more productivity out of these platforms. So that's primarily the reason.
Yeah, it's a really good point, by the way, about the whole Java Scala thing. In fact, if you stop by our booth, you can get these really cool T-shirts that Kat's wearing that says Scala loves Java. That was a big kind of conversation we had, and we absolutely see the growth, a lot of growth coming from the Java community as well, for sure. Yeah. Good question, thanks. Any other questions? Way in the back. Those are usually the best questions when they're like from the back of the room.
Hi, yeah. I wanted to ask you about if you have any recommendations as far as security frameworks or tools or considerations when it comes to using the Reactive platform with your customer data and the data science effort that you are fielding?
Yeah, so there's two ways to answer that question. One way is a technical answer, which I'm not qualified to do, so I'll point you in that direction. The second, I think, which is actually more probably likely a scenario, is the people question, right? I think generally most data breaches and most security flaws are from people. And so as I pointed out, I think in my deck, I think the best way and the way that I would say we're approaching this challenge is by leaving data in place. I think anytime you move data, you're exposing it to a potential security risk. I think there's a lot of considerations when it comes to cloud. I think that a lot of folks have moved, completely lifted and shifted. In fact, some folks have even driven semi-trucks into the building to pull data out of their business. I don't advocate for that. I would say leave your data in place and do some machine learning, do some data science on it, extract the artifacts, right? And then use that in the application itself. As far as Reactive platform goes, I would say absolutely we're seeing a lot of adoption behind the firewall, more so than on the public cloud today. We're in a lot of talks at IBM with Lightbend to think very carefully through how we would deploy this on a public cloud setting. So I can't answer specifically on the technical side, but as I point out in the talk, I would say a lot of it is the human interaction. So from a data perspective, leave your data where it is, and model it, right, and extract the artifacts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Yeah, Brad.
It's actually not a question, it's just a clarification around for the last question. So there was a session yesterday from Ryan Hodgen from IBM, who's right here. So for any of you that were not able to attend that session because we had parallel tracks, Ryan really probably answered the first part of that question, Joel, on the technical side, which is how do you think about security when you're deploying, designing and deploying reactive applications. So that talk, like all the talks, will be available online for replay. We know that a lot of you do that. Last year's session, we had, what, more than 30,000 views of the replays of the session. So if you weren't able to attend Ryan's session, heartily recommend you go look that online. It's a great talk, and it's got some really good recommendations around that.
Yeah, and you're here, right, Ryan? You can stop by the booth and get help one-on-one. Cool. Other questions? Thanks, Brad. No. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great conference.